Adam and Clara walked along the road. The sun was high as they went. Sweat beaded on their brows, yet they were tense. Rumors had been on the road of danger, and it was what made them come this way. A figure advanced on them. It crouched low to the ground. But by the light from above, it was apparent that it had no head. It ready to spear at the adventurers. Welcome to Mythical Phylogeny Adventures. I'm your guide, Jason. Today, we try and meet eye to eye with the Blemmyae, the Headless ones. Blemmyae, or Blemmies, are described as headless figures, appearing in the writings of Greek historians like Pliny the Elder, Nonnus's Dionysiaca, the writings of Herodotus, and others. Strabo and Aeschylus also called them sternophthalmi, or chest eyes. Now, with all of these scholars, they are relying on stories they had been told, which makes their sources less reliable. Some sources claim that the original myth does originate from Africa as a whole. The name sternophthalmi is a good description. The Blemmyae are headless. Now, that doesn't mean faceless. Their face is on their chest. There are two major descriptions of them based on eye location, either on their chest or on their shoulders. Normally, they are depicted as savage and cannibalistic. Now, this is actually pretty common in mythology. India has Kanbanda, China has Xingtin, and Japan has Donosura. Mind you, one is a demon, another god, and the last is still a monster. Now, there is something to take note here. The mythical Blemmyae are said to live near the borders of Libya and Nubia, but other sources later said elsewhere, such as an island off to India. Now, here is a bit of history for it. It is speculated that this description comes from the hunting tactics used by the African tribes at the time. They would crouch down low, which would place their head before their chest, which could create the illusion of no head. But that makes the other versions a bit more complicated, so perhaps there are other connections. This could reinforce the African origin of the myth. Remember, the ancient Greek writers would have heard of them from foreign trade partners, normally Egyptians, which had a poor relationship with the Nubian Empire of the time. A possible cause is a birth defect called anencephalia, or born without a brain, which isn't far from the name akephalio, which was also used for them. But a more likely option is Klippel-Feil syndrome, or born with the cervical vertebrae fused. It is more common in women than men, but sadly usually has other health problems, including heart conditions. So, how would you make a race like this exist? And this is surprisingly simple. Now, they would still need all the parts of the head: the brain, eyes, ears, nose, and mouth. So, the most simple would be just to move the head into the top of the chest, bulk up the shoulder muscles to cover the head. But that is the simplest, not the best option, and that is to separate out the head. Some parts need to be near certain organs. The nose primarily exists to bring in air into the body and the lungs. So, set the nasal cavity right next to the lungs. This would result in rapid airflow into the lungs. But the nose does another thing. It warms the air, but also adds moisture going into the lungs, and removes the moisture with the air leaving the lungs. This keeps the alveoli in the lungs working properly, while preventing excess loss of water. To correct this, we may want to extend the nasal cavity to be deeper where it links with the bronchi of the lungs. Now, this could definitely give it a high-pitched voice. It might sound funny coming from a creature of this size, but possible. Yet in humans, the respiratory and digestive systems are linked. But we don't need to do that here. A very short esophagus can link the mouth straight to the stomach. This means that it doesn't need to go through the diaphragm. And more importantly, it cannot choke while eating. The problem would be setting up the bones and muscles. We could modify the lower ribs into maxilla and mandible bones. We'll also need to create the muscles around the mouth and link them onto the back and the rest of the ribs. This could potentially give it a larger mouth than a human. The additional muscles would thicken up their chest and back, but overall a minor change. But that would have a major impact. This does create an issue for speaking. Sounds are made using mouth and tongue shapes, not the nose. So perhaps there is limited crossover between respiratory and digestive tracts. Else, they may not be able to speak, or if they do it, by means of forcing air from their stomach, but no windpipe involved. Unless their language is based on tongue clicks and smacking lips, which does mirror the Khoisan languages found in southern Africa. Other side of the continent, the eye location is what dictates two major versions, chest or shoulders. Which is it? Well, the shoulders create a major issue. Vision would be tied to arm position, which isn't a good setup. Thus, I prefer the chest. We'll need to create an ocular socket to hold them by reshaping the ribs. It is pretty simple though. But there is a problem here. Without a head, the visual field can be limited. To change what it is looking at, the Blemmyae will need to turn its whole body. Now, the biggest change is creating a place to hold the brain. The brain is critical. Damage to it is usually fatal, if not debilitating. This means it needs someplace safe and stable. When your head is struck, your brain can slam into the inside of the skull and damage it. Due to the lung and heart placement and movement, the best place for the brain would be above them. This would place less strain on the heart with pumping the blood a smaller distance. The size of the cranial cavity would need to remain relative to the same as a human's. If it is too big, the brainstem would be more prone to injury, but too small and more chance of a concussion. Then we need the ears. You will want them on the top or the sides, somewhere exposed to the open air, and that is why I would say the top, like with cats, perched above where the neck should be. On the sides, the arms will get in the way and distort the sound. The ear location has a couple of factors. They need to be able to pick up important sounds, such as the sounds of their own voices. Now, due to the potentially higher pitched voice, they may benefit from having their ears closer together. Mind you, there is a little wiggle room here. If the ears are too far apart, they could have more issues with picking up the different wavelengths. Think about the songs of whales having a subsonic component. Again, we'll need to rework the ribs to create a cranial cavity and the eye sockets. It will end up being about the size of a human skull. And that means enlarging the chest as a whole. The new cranial cavity will need to link to the top of the rib cage, most likely the first and second ribs, and the vertebrae and spine for support. The only real issue here would be with the breast location on the females, and there is a simple solution. Lower them from the chest to the belly below the mouth. But the mouth location might have issues during pregnancy, assuming that they are mammals. With their belly expanding, it might make mouth movements difficult. Of course, a solution would be to give birth at a younger developmental stage, with smaller offspring. That would make them depend on their parents for a longer period of time, but might be for the best here. Conceptually, this is actually pretty easy overall. Just a lot of nitty-gritty refinement. The rest of its body is pretty simple. It could have larger shoulders due to not needing the neck muscles. So, how would you combat Blemmyae? It It doesn't have any unique abilities, save for the lack of a head. That means basically, it is like fighting a human. You can bring whatever weapon and armor you would like here, but pick something to combat their armor. They'll need to rework their armor a bit. There will need to be some form of slit or holes around the eyes and nose to permit sight and breathing, but nothing too different than what goes into making a helmet. Now in combat, they are weak on the visual field. They have to physically turn to watch you. Anything you can do to keep them spinning will be critical. If you strike it in the chest, it could potentially have the same issues as a head blow would for a human. If I am right on the brain location, your target should be attacks delivered down onto the spot above the brain, where the neck should be. Now, they are not mentioned using magic, but I would wager it would be a fair chance for them. They are intelligent and could easily learn it themselves. Overall, Blemmyae are very similar to humans, except for the missing head. Anything you can do, they can do it too. That is why I'm giving them a 3 out of 10 for difficulty. This should be a fairly straightforward and even fight. So, the big question, can you ally with a Blemmyae? Well, yes, you could. They are intelligent and can be negotiated with, so you could ally with them, even trade. There is only one problem. They are said to be cannibalistic. Now, this could be hearsay or slanderous accusations, and complete fabrications, but you should take it into account if you meet them. As for the rest of their body, there isn't anything too special here. Overall, this is more akin to dealing with humans. The figure rushed the two adventurers. Adam's new sword met the spear. As Clara jumped back, she was nervous. This wasn't a beast. She could see the intelligence in its eyes. This wasn't a monster. Adam didn't waver though. Flame sprang from his hand and filled his foe's mouth. It coughed as the adventurer lunged forward, his blade piercing its chest. The Blemmyae stumbled backwards and fell onto the ground. He wiped his blade and beckoned for Clara to come again. Nervously, she sidestepped the corpse as they continued on their path. The Blemmyae are an interesting creature. It would seem that you can make a creature work without a head. Thank you for watching, adventurers. Please return next time for Ophonem. Until then, I'll see you on the roads.